The way we're going to do it is we have our computer in place now, and you can streamline on the chat the questions that you have, and then we will be able to answer them directly. In the meantime, I wanted just to mention to us all that today we are on the 48-hour clock. Our last 2 days of campaigning for our fundraising for the Alshech Academy, and this was the campaign that we started about 10 days ago, and it's going to culminate in Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni, which is now, and it's our invitation to invite all our 1,000 subscribers to donate whatever they bring in their hearts to donate towards the sustaining of the Alshech Academy during the current year. So we hope that you'll join us with that. Just to highlight a few of the achievements that we've created a list of 500 different classes that you have available with a press of a button on many subjects, including Jewish meditation, which is very difficult to hear about, the Ashlag Kabbalah, and also the source of good health. Many fascinating subjects, as well as our classic Alshech Torah Moshe, and the Ramchal, and of course Likutei Moharan. So we are now ready and inviting you to ask whatever questions you'd like to. So maybe we can invite Boaz to start us off with a question at the moment. Boaz, do you have a question for us?
Well, not off the top of my head, but one will come.
One will come. Okay. Rosh Shmuel, what do you want to just give us a very quick synopsis of what you felt we've learned during the weeks of Likutey Moharan here?
So one of the concepts about learning of Likutey Moharan is that although every possible combination of Torahs, and within each Torah are sifim, some lessons are 8 sif, some are 10 sif, some are 12 sif, some are short. Although every combination and permutation of those is a legitimate limud, there is a primacy to the order that Likutey Moharan is written in. And there are even certain lessons that, when Rabbi Nachman Zal wrote them down, Rabbi Nachman primarily wanted to rearrange the order of the parts. So it seems a little bit difficult because every possible combination is valid according to the 18 laws of learning Likutey Moharan found in the Bir Likutey. We've begun learning Likutey Moharan here in order, starting with lesson 1, and now we're on lesson 2. And we should note a little bit of the importance of preceding lesson 1 before lesson 2. In lesson 1, one of the things we learn is how to receive life force and happiness from all the things around us. And in lesson 2, we learn about cutting out nonsense. Now, there's deep secrets involved in these things. The cutting out of nonsense is the secret to the prayers of Mashiach, the way that Mashiach prays, and this is the type of prayer that we have access to also, as well as the type of prayer that we're accustomed to. One of the subjects we've discussed is that one of the differences between Mashiach and regular folk, or even other tzaddikim, is that Mashiach only has access to this certain type of Mashiach prayer that is cultivated specifically by eliminating nonsense, basically. Not just sin, but things that are not clearly good, clearly beneficial, or clearly have a mitzvah to them. Are we still on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So it's very important that in all of our efforts to make ourselves and our surroundings holy, that we don't become sad, we don't become depressed. It is explained differences in sorts of sadnesses. Maybe someone can't hear.
Yeah,
Wow.
they can't hear for some reason.
So it's very important that we don't become sad in our work. So we need to find a source of renewable life force. There's an idea that there are two sources of life force, or shefa. It can be very basically categorized as the good one and the bad one. And we want to tap into the good one, of course. Maybe we could say the most basic difference between them is that one doesn't have like a carbon footprint, so to speak. There's no negative side effects that come from the shefa, from the side of good. The side of bad also can give people, it's like the dark side in Star Wars, it can give people cool abilities and it can give people influence and how to win friends and influence or whatever. But the problem is that there's incidental damage. People who come up that way, there's no way they can avoid stepping on people's heads, even if they make it up to them later. There's always some kind of a dark side to it. The Hebrew term for this is achizas aklipos. It isn't the fault of the person who's receiving the shefa. They could have the very best of intentions and even be acting in a very principled way. But there are forces in the world that would like to get some of what the good people have got, even though these forces themselves aren't so good, and they seize the opportunity. They have a lot of zerizus. They have a lot of alacrity. It's kind of an obscure Hebrew, English word, alacrity even, but they're very on top of their game. So the only way to protect ourselves from them is to receive our life force only from the side of good, which is inaccessible to these klipas, these not well-intentioned forces. And you could say that in an abstract spiritual way. You could even say that certain people or certain groups of people, certain bodies of people, could be the government or companies or something, that they want to sort of glom on. So one who receives his life force only from the side of Kedusha. But the issue is that we're receiving our life force from somewhere. Why was it so difficult to leave Egypt? Many of the Jews didn't even leave with Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? I mean, they were in slavery, but they also had their basic needs met. They complained in the desert, we don't have big pots of free fish out here. So they had big pots of free fish. And so it's very hard to get ourselves to change anything when we have what we need, at least on a basic level, even if there are downsides to the way that we're getting the things that we need. So in Likutei Moharan 2, we're already talking about ways of eliminating these heavy side effect sources of shefa, of divine inspiration and just stuff that comes into our lives, useful stuff. And so, but before we start eliminating, we need to make sure that we're not going to be deficient in our basic needs. So it's very important that we not only learn, but that we make a strong effort in Likutei Moharan 1, in particular, as a foundation to all the other teachings in Likutei Moharan, and very notably Likutei Moharan 2. There are extensive books written on the basis of Likutei Moharan 1. So there's a set of books called Likutei Halachos it explains the Likutei Moharan according to how it applies to all of the at least all the major laws in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of the Jewish law. And it is both an explanation and it also is an example of how we can use the Likutei Moharan. And so while Likutei Halachos is fairly comprehensive, covering nearly the entire Likutei Moharan, there are many other books written specifically on Likutei Moharan number 1. There's a book called Nachas HaShulchan, the Shernei Rav, which goes through the entire series of the Shulchan Aruch, the order of the Shulchan Aruch, only according to Likutei Moharan number 1. My teacher in Breslov wrote a book of like sort of a therapy methodologies, healing methodology to heal oneself and others, entirely based on Likutey Moharan number 1. We spent a year of classes, a year and a half of classes, hour-long classes, expounding upon Likutey Moharan number 1. And even then, we didn't finish the whole thing. So Likutey Moharan number 1 is included in all of the other teachings of Likutey Moharan, and it's very important to make a strong effort in Likutey Moharan number 1. The basic principle being to look upon the intellect, the divine inspiration in all things around us. This can be determined based on the intelligence, our appreciation of the sheer intelligence of the thing, and anything has that. We can. A metaphor I received was if you go into the woods with a microscope, where we do go into the woods usually for hisboidinus, but for talking to for talking to Hashem in a private way, because the woods is a good place to sort of get away from the hustle and bustle of the things that would distract us. And we don't usually bring a microscope in, but this metaphor uses a microscope. And when one looks at the forest, they see a whole world of things going on. And when they look at a single rock or a single clump of dirt under a microscope, also, they see a whole world of things going on. There's nothing dumb. There's nothing that isn't filled with intelligence. So if we can only utilize that intelligence and get life force from it. And so this essential step of appreciation before judging is the first step that we discussed at length in the series of classes on Likutey Moharan number 1. You may have you have a question at this point. I don't know.
No, we're still soliciting good questions. I'm waiting for a good question to come through.
Okay.
So carry on.
Now, I should say within Likutey Moharan that there is a bit of a warning about this process. That we're not saying that we're going to get all the life force we need from a single rock and we're going to stare at it forever. And this is why it's a metaphor to go in the woods with a microscope, but most of us aren't encouraged necessarily to do this on any sort of a regular basis. This is something that Rabbi Nachman says that the Seichel Shebechol Davar Meir B'chol Derachav. It lights up all ways, not just ways that involve deep contemplation that take a long time, because we do have a lot of things we're doing in our day. To expand that point a little bit, in Likutei Moharan 10, Rabbi Nachman discusses 3 levels of the mountain and the field and the house, and that all of our effort is focused around the house. And the basic difference between these levels is that the mountain is a very inspiring place. One may think thoughts on a mountain that they don't think in other places. You could chalk it up for Gashmias reasons. The air is different. The pollution doesn't access them as much. The air is also thinner. If you've been like to Colorado or places like this with very high mountains, you also can see much further. I saw a statistic about people working in offices. The people who have a nice window in their office tend to have better mental health because there's something important about being able to see a long distance, regardless what in particular you're looking at. So the mountain is a very inspiring place. That being said, in our day-to-day life, that we need to do things and help people, we don't always have a nice window. So we need to go to a place with a nice window sometimes. That's the mountain. But we aren't encouraged to stay there for extended periods of time. The next level is the field. And the most basic difference between a field and a mountain is that a field is flat. A field is a place that you could build a house. It has potential to build a house. Another difference is that people are found in the field. Some people. Not as many people as like in the city, which we could call the city. It's getting much closer to the level of house. It is where we've taken the intelligence and inspiration in our surroundings and we've actually made stuff out of it. And so in the field, we can sort of, I guess we could do field research. We can take our ideas and we can sort of try them out. And we can take the inspiration that's in everything around us and start to, we're not going to take an obvious thing like, this rock has these minerals and therefore I'm going to take on this behavior. I saw this interesting shape in a tree. and I appreciated how God did it, and therefore I'm going to arrange the furniture in my living room according to that shape. No, that's preposterous. We aren't encouraging to do that. And I don't think that anybody would actually think to do that. However, one might think that this avodah sounds stupid based on that kind of line of thinking. They might think, oh, you guys are saying, one, you should just go hang out on the mountain forever, and you should just deeply contemplate forever. No, we're not saying that. And that subconscious or conscious tick should not hold us up from receiving the life force that Rabbi Nachman says we can receive in the first Likutei Moharan. Another thought that someone could have, sort of an, I guess, accusatory thought about this avodah is that we're only, is that we're going to do it in a very obvious way, that we're going to take some kind of spiritual concept and sort of force fit it onto our surroundings and sort of live this sort of baseless ritual lifestyle. Of course, we have lots of rituals, but they're very old and very developed and very explained, and the way that we can benefit from them in tangible, perceivable ways is also very well expounded upon. It isn't rituals we're just making up on the spot here. So one should also not think that we're attempting to do some sort of wizardry here. That's asur. That's asur midiraisa. So the field is a very important zone with regard to this. This is where we allow the inspiration that we get from things to sort of flush through us in sort of a general way before we make any piski dinim and come up with any specific behaviors that we're going to change. It's a little bit like if someone, let's say that someone's a musician, and they're playing a song and they're playing it sort of poorly. And they can see on their teacher's face that they aren't enjoying the performance of the song. And so they ask their music teacher an overly technical question about, well, maybe what you didn't like about my playing is that I held that one note a little too long, or that my fingers didn't quite switch on the keys at the right time, and so there's a little flub extra note in there. Teacher, hold on, buddy. Before you get all these chachmais are ideas that come into our mind that aren't actually such beneficial, but they sort of sound smart to us. And so sometimes we think them, and they're mebabble our thoughts, and they mess up our thoughts. Mebabble is sort of what it sounds like. Sometimes we speak them and wind up saying things that don't have a lot of content to them, although they sort of seemed to us to have content to them. People don't go around saying things that they don't think have any content, generally speaking. But just because they think it has content doesn't mean it may be chachmes. Rabbi Nachman says in Likutei Moharan that's not even really considered speech. It's sort of like in the Ber Likutei, he compares it to like sort of how a monkey looks like a human, but does some things like a human. There's like monkeys painting and stuff. You can find videos on the internet of such things, and they can do simple puzzles. But in other ways, they're completely nothing at all remotely like a person. They can't write a book. That's a big, real categorical difference.
Okay, I think we have a question.
You have a question.
So, Boaz.
Well, I have a series of questions.
Oh.
We have Mashiach Alley here in Tsfat. Do we actually know that the Mashiach is going, either one, Yosef or David, going to appear here in Tsfat first and be, do we know any of them?
There's a lot of different questions. Let's address the question about Tsfat. Mashiach will come from the north. Tsfat is in the north. Not only is Tsfat in the north. Tsfat, the word Tsfat is based on Safon, like north. Safun means hidden. A safina is a boat. Yeah, I know the spelling different, but it's tseruf. You can do that. And in the Gemara, actually, you even see someone, if someone is looking down at you from the roof deck, you might want to be mistafin, which is spelt like boat, like hide. So it's a language of hidden, and it's a language of north, and Tsfat is sort of a place of hidden secrets. It's people who don't have any connection with this place don't necessarily know that this place exists. It's not like Jerusalem that everybody in the world has some idea of what Jerusalem is. Tsfat is rather hidden, and yet both the Shulchan Aruch and the Arizal come from Tsfat, and these are things that have basically there's no aspect of modern Judaism that does not in some way root from one of these two guys. Ask a chacham and they can draw you the lines to connect to one of these two guys, right? So a little bit more about the Indian of the north. In the Zohar, the directions are a little bit different. We would think of north as being like in the North Pole, but so we think of that as up, or perhaps you could think of it as forward. That's the way our maps are typically oriented, in the way that we hold a compass. That being said, in the Zohar, the Beis Hamikdash is the top of the world. And so up is, well, depending on where you're standing, up, I mean, it goes around the world. Essentially, up is facing east. So that even if you're on the other side of the Beis Hamikdash, you go around the world, and that's called up. So then what would left be? Left is north. So north is the side of Gevurah. Okay, so look at the letter base. The letter base is open on the left, right? And so there's two variations. There's with the dagesh, the dot in the middle, and without the dot in the middle, the base or vase. And that dot represents the tzaddik. And the tzaddik can do something very special, which is that the tzaddik is able to not only face that way. We don't usually face that way. That is the direction from which things come from a chaos state into an order state. And so it's sort of scary to face that way. It's a little bit like, I guess making your own wine could be an example of that. It's actually, you could just go to the store and buy it, and that's really what most people do. But those who are extremely careful about Pesach, for example, will be careful to make their own wine, even though this is a much more involved sort of chaotic process. You have to mix these ingredients, and they just do their chaos thing in there, and it produces wine. So we can call someone who makes their own wine on Pesach for that inyan at tzaddik. Tzaddikim and all inyanim are able to face the direction that things are coming into the world from a chaos state. Most of us know this as Gevurah. And then tzaddikim can actually enter and can actually leave out the side of the letter base. And they can continue out into that space and influence things as they're coming into the world. We discussed this idea in Likutei Moharan too about Mashiach, that Mashiach goes under the nose of Hashem, where in these streams of chesed and gevurah that they enter the world of blessing and punishment, enter the world. And Mashiach's job is to direct those flows, but he's got to go out of there to do it, right? So where do tzaddikim get their courage that they can do this from? Because gevurah at its root is bina, and so what is fearing a situation? It's primarily when we don't understand it. And so we don't know what's going to happen, and that's scary. And moreover, we don't know how we're going to deal with it properly. And so someone who knows these things, so a tzaddik who knows the entire Torah, and pretty much any issue in the world is addressed by the Torah, thanks to halacha particularly. We have to know every situation, we have to know, is it kosher or is it not kosher? And that's a complicated conversation. But tzaddikim are good at these complicated conversations. They're very learned. Tsfat is, so that's the idea of Mashiach coming through Tsfat, that Mashiach comes from the north, which is both hidden and is also the place from which all things come into reality. And we can understand this concept better from Likutei Moharan too, that Mashiach directs the flows that enter the left side of the base, which is north, according to the directions of the Zohar, which is the language of the name of Tsfat.
So have you actually got the date for us yet?
Of when Mashiach comes?
Yeah.
It's Asr.
It's Asr.
It's Asr to tell you the date.
Okay, thank you for that question, Boaz. Thank you.
You have a series, is that?
I have another one on that.
Okay.
Is the Mashiach going to go to Hebron to connect with the patriarchs like David did? Is that?
That is a question of Techiyas Amesim. So in Breslov, in Likutei Halachos, there's an inyan that's discussed. Why is Techiyas Amesim mentioned so many times at the beginning of the Shemona Esrei? Without a clear mention of Mashiach, there is a very clear mention of Techiyas Amesim multiple times. Because what is Mashiach coming to do? Ultimately, Techiyas Amesim. He's going to gather the exile, those who are exiled. Mashiach does that. Mashiach, he's involved in the construction of the Beis Hamikdash, but all of this is to the end. The Beis Hamikdash brings into the world the manifest ability to do such supernatural things as Techiyas Amesim. by the way, I should say that is mitzad kedusha, as per what we discussed in the beginning, because there's a question. There's many stories of people who have asked tzaddikim to revive their deceased loved ones, and the tzaddikim have told them to pray, and that Techiyas HaMeisim will come. And that isn't to say that the tzaddikim are unable to do so. But if we start reviving good people, then the floodgates open. We can just revive anybody. So when Techiyas HaMeisim is coming, mitzad kedusha, we don't need to be doichek hazman. We don't need to press for time and feel like frantic and urgent. We must revive them now. Pray for Techiyas HaMeisim specifically. And with Techiyas HaMeisim can't happen without the Beis HaMikdash. It can't happen without Mashiach. So what you asked about Hebron. If you visit Hebron, there's a tunnel there that's there's a little thing that you can smell Gan Eden there, and there's a staircase that goes down also into Gan Eden, and there's a series of tunnels. And it's said that the tunnels, at least Mitzvah Kedusha, that the tunnels, all the most righteous who are buried in all places in the world will return to Eretz Yisrael through the tunnels. And one of the opinions about where they will emerge is Hebron.
Thank you so much, Rav Shmuel. Thank you so much. May you be blessed, and thank you for teaching us. And Chodesh Tov to you. And we're looking forward to continuing our wonderful Likutey Moharan next week.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rav Hanan.